Welcome back, guys. First things first, let's set up the project. So we're going to go into new projects and just use the first person. Now this tutorial series is going to be on blueprints, so sorry for people who like to code, but blueprints. So we're not going to start off with any starter content. We're going to use the first person blueprint, and let's just call this arrow tutorial. Okay. Before we get started with the actual blueprint coding, we need to set up a couple things. First things first, we need to get rid of the little crosshair in the HUD, because when setting up the arrow with that variable initial velocity, that arrow doesn't, or this crosshair doesn't really apply. So if we go to blueprints, hold on, let me just adjust this to list. If we just go to the HUD, I'm just going to disable it here. Okay. The second thing, I noticed that in the character, if we maximize this, in the spawn projectiles, you'll see that it gets the actor location and it just adjusts it adjusts where the bullet flies based off of a hard-coded gun offset. We're not going to do that just because it runs into problems if you aim straight up. You see how it looks like it's coming kind of from his head? Over here it looks like it's coming from the gun. So we're going to just create a socket on the mesh that is going to appear right in front of the gun. That's going to do the same thing, just a little bit better, because when you're aiming up, it won't look like it's coming from your face. So, go to right hand, add socket. Let's call it bullet socket for namesake. Then we're just going to adjust this, the location, make it in front like that. And just adjust some of these other values here. That's good enough. And then in my character, instead of all of this, you don't need that. Just get the mesh, or actually it's right here. And then we're going to get socket location. Put the name of the socket, bullet socket. Get that. Okay, so you'll see that it comes, see how when you aim straight up, it looks like it's coming from the gun. Okay, so now that that's all set up, we need to import a mesh that looks like an arrow. Now you can go online and download one, or you could make one very simply with 3ds Max. That's what I did. It's really simple. It's just a cylinder and a pyramid that's been just attached together. That's really it. Export it with FBX. It's going to be a static mesh. So when you import it over here, it's going to come up as a static mesh. And now we also need two things. The first one we need is a we're going to set up the flying blueprint. So let's just create a new folder called arrow. Now, for this particular video, we're only going to need to set up one actor for the arrow. However, if you wanted to embed into the character, you need to set up two types of arrow actors. The first one is the flying actor, and the second one is when it hits the position to just stay there. So for this one, let's just create the flying actor. So go to blueprints, actor, let's call it flying arrow. And then over here we need two different components. The arrow itself is going to have no collision, and we're actually going to use a little sphere inside as our collision object. So let's drop this down pretty small. And then underneath it, add our static mesh, which we'll call arrow. Bring in the static mesh for the arrow over here, and then we're going to do two things. The first one is move it, or to rotate it 90 degrees, so because the forward direction is this way, not that way. And then we're also, just to make it look like it's going to embed into the object, bring this part forward a little bit. That's good enough. The reason why is because the collision's happening from that little sphere and not from the arrow. The third part is to just turn the arrow's collision off, and the sphere's collision will just remain in overlap all dynamic. And that's really it for setting up this section of the arrow. You can add like other things, I don't know, but for the purpose of this tutorial, we'll just leave it as so. And then just to see the size, let's just bring it into the world. See how... Oops. There we go. Bring the size. That's pretty small. If I was creating like a I don't know, a crossbow spike, that'd probably be the size, but we're making arrows here, so let's adjust the size of this. Maybe twice the size of what it is currently. I think that's good. Yeah, that looks about right. Okay. So now that that's set up, let's get to actually creating the arrow, the flying part of the arrow. So, here we are. In the tick, because we need this to be called every tick of the game, we're going to adjust the actor rotation. Now, so let's create a custom event. Call it arrow angle. And then the end result is we're just going to set actor rotation. Okay. So if we're looking at the projectile's dynamics for this, all we're really adjusting is the pitch for this. So if the velocity is getting slower, to pull the pitch down, and if it's getting faster in a certain direction. So let's just go over here and just get velocity. We're going to make the rotation on the x-axis, because the x-axis over here, if you look at the rotation output, if you just print it to a string, it ranges from -90 to +90, and that's exactly what we need. -90 being down, +90 being up. So this will be our new pitch value. So let's just break the rotation, and we're going to use just the pitch. We're going to use just the pitch for our new rotation. Everything else we need to keep exactly the same as what it currently is, so we need to just get the actor's rotation, break that so that yaw and roll stays with the character. Okay, and that is basically it. The only thing that we need to do, because this is a custom event and we need to have it in tick, so we need to attach that. So every time the tick is called, it'll trigger arrow angle. Lastly, we need to go to the My Character, and instead of having it spawn the little ball, we need it to spawn flying arrow. Okay, that's a problem. And the reason why that's a problem is because we didn't specify the actual velocity of this. So for this part, because the second video is going to be showing how to create that adjusting velocity. So for this part, let's just go over here and adjust the sorry about that. We need to add one more thing. Projectile movement. That was the issue. So let's make this initial velocity, just to see that arcing motion, 200. Okay? I'll show you how to adjust to make this part variable in the next video. So you'll see that it just kind of goes. That's good. It's good enough for now. And that is how you create a arcing motion with an arrow. We'll set up collisions and everything like that in the next video. So thanks for watching, and stay with us to continue.